So in today's video, the machine work is actually already done, but you guys are gonna go back in time, I guess. And what it amounts to on this Mopar build that we're doing, there are a couple operations that we don't have the capabilities to do in our shop. One being all of the work on the mains, because we are going with ARP studs. So with that, you have to have it align honed.
Which we thought was a good idea on this engine regardless.
Right. I mean, I guess how come you never bought the equipment to do it?
Just never had the opportunity, didn't feel like there would be enough of them to pay for the equipment, didn't have the manpower to run one extra machine.
Didn't have the space for one extra machine.
Didn't have the space for it, so we just always farmed out the line hones whenever we needed them done.
So it is on our list of equipment that we'd like to have, but for now, we usually have to farm that out. We actually got in touch with Geddes Racing Engines. I hope I'm saying that right.
I think you are.
Angelo down there, the owner, got in touch with him, and he said he would be willing to do the work on it and actually would be willing to let me come down and look over their shoulder and not only look over their shoulder, but hold a camera over their shoulder. So they did the work on the mains. The other thing they did is did our bushings for our lifter bores. We're gonna go through and show the machine work on that, and I'll kind of walk you guys through what they did down there. But super appreciative to them for letting me come in and film and kind of look over their shoulder.
Not only doing the job, but letting you film them doing the job.
Yeah, and you know, it would have been nice if the cleaning guy could have come down too, but
I had work to do.
Yeah,
I had cleaning going on here.
He had lots of stuff to clean down here, so he didn't end up doing it. But we're moving along on this thing. This type of build just takes a lot of time figuring out parts and getting parts on the way. I've got a lot of parts on order, trying to get them in so that we can keep moving on it, but it just kind of takes time. So we take a lot of things pretty seriously in our shop, but there's not really a lot of things that we take more seriously than lunch or dinner. For a lot of years, it was a pain to figure out what to eat during the middle of a busy workday, with the nearest restaurants being tens of miles away from the shop. But with today's sponsor, Factor, we can get delicious meals that are fresh, never frozen, delivered straight to our door. Factor meals are ready to eat in as little as 2 minutes, which makes them perfect for people with busy lifestyles. Factor also offers flexibility with meal plans that range from 6 to 18 meals per week, plus you can pause or reschedule your deliveries at any time. Choose from over 35 different meal options, including keto, calorie smart, vegan and veggie, and more. And anybody that knows my dad knows that he cannot cook, but since Factor's meals are 100% ready to heat and eat, even he can make a restaurant quality meal for the whole family to enjoy. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code JAMS50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and free wellness shots for life. 2 free wellness shots from 3 available flavors for every order while you're an active subscriber. Again, you'll receive 50% off your first Factor box and free wellness shots for life when you visit factor75.com and use code JAMS50. Thank you to Factor for sponsoring this video. All right, we got to head down to Colorado Springs. We're headed to Geddes Racing Engines to have them help us out with some machine work on this. So it's 4:30 in the morning. And let's get going. Of course, whenever you have somewhere to be, you're always out of gas, but I filled up quick and made the 2-hour drive down to the Springs. Geddes has a CNC block machining center that they'll be using to do the machining to install lifter bushings in our Big Block Mopar, and I'm going to do my best to explain the process to you with my limited knowledge. The 4th axis fixture on the CNC machine references the main tunnel of the engine block, as well as referencing the cam tunnel so that all machining features can be performed to blueprint specifications. Once the block is mounted on the fixture, Sheldon uses the probe to pick up the head dowel location. From there, they have a program written which will correct all of our lifter bores to the factory locations, since they can actually often be pretty far off from the factory.
So the spot facing deal is kind of, we have no idea core shift on this thing. So I brought it down here and spot faced it.
Okay.
It may cut more down here. It may go over to here and it may not cut anything.
Right.
So we'll just kind of, we'll run this side, see how it goes, and then
go
from there.
The first operation that's going to be performed is to clean up or spot face the top of each lifter bore with an end mill. And an important step that they took before simply running the program was to manually check that the tool would have clearance at each lifter location. If you're wondering why we're going to the trouble to install lifter bushings on this build, there's a couple of reasons.
First and foremost, the goal is to make this engine as nice as we possibly can for Scanner Danner, and by bushing the lifters we're able to correct any discrepancies in alignment and positioning of the bores. In addition, the manufacturer of the hydraulic roller lifters that we're using in the build recommends no more than 2/1000 lifter clearance. The wear in the block currently would put us at well over 2.5 to 3/1000, increasing the concern of noise and issues with oil pressure and proper hydraulic lifter function.
Okay, now we'll roll it to the other side.
The rotary fourth axis on the CNC makes it pretty slick to rotate to the opposite bank to continue machining, and it's definitely a different experience than we're used to back home in our own machine shop. You may notice the difference in the depth of the spot facing on some of the bores, which isn't a problem and is due to the differences in the rough casting, which Sheldon mentioned earlier. Again, I'm not entirely sure on the common terminology used for this process, but the next step is to sort of do a rough bore to open up the diameter of the lifter bores close to the final size we need for our press fit for our bushings. The factory diameter of the lifter bores is around 0.906 inches, and our bushings have an OD that's about a couple thousandths over 1 inch. The final step on the block before the lifter bushings can be installed is to go back through with a reamer, which should get us a precise finished bore for our interference fit on the bushings. Although cast iron is often machined dry, as you've seen up to this point, Sheldon apparently has had better accuracy and repeatability when using a cutting lube on this operation. With all of the lifter bores machined with the correct alignment, positions, and sized to accept our lifter bushings, the block is carefully cleaned and pulled back off the CNC machine. The supplied bushings do not come drilled with an oil hole, so they have a jig set up on the bridge port that allows them to quickly drill a hole at the same position on each bushing. They like to use a center drill as it works to drill the hole and put a quick chamfer on all in one go. Before installing the bushings in the block, they coat the bores with some Loctite. The CHE bushings we're using have a small relief turn down on the bottom to help with alignment during install, and the oil hole is carefully aligned with the oil galley before the bushings are gently driven into position. The height of each bushing is checked with a set of calipers to ensure that they're all installed within a reasonable depth tolerance of each other. While Sheldon finished up getting the bushings installed in the block, Angelo finished up the prep work on the main caps for doing the align hone. After filing any burrs off the caps, they're first clamped in the cap grinder to grind the side flat. By doing this, the cap will have a nice true 90-degree reference for when it's clamped in the machine to grind the mating surface. A small amount of material is then ground off the mating surface, such that when the caps are torqued onto the block, the housing bore is smaller than the factory diameter specification. This is a scenario where you need to take just enough material off so it'll clean up in the hone, but anything in excess just increases the amount of time you'll spend honing, so your experience really comes into play. After the caps have been ground and deburred, they're reinstalled onto the block and the ARP studs are torqued to spec. The block is then installed in the line hone and the proper mandrel is selected, and with honing oil running over the block, several passes are made before checking the size with a bore gauge. As with every honing process, it seems a bit tedious and requires a fair amount of patience and skill. Depending on how things are coming out, the block may be turned end for end throughout the process in an effort to keep all of the mains even. As we approached the finished size, Angelo removed the inner 3 main caps and very, very lightly sanded the mating surface to tighten them up by just a few tenths. And with them reinstalled and a few more strokes of the hone, the diameter specification was hit. With the mains finished up, we had just one more operation that needed to be finished before I could head back home to our shop, and that is to size our lifter bushings for the proper clearance. As installed, the bushings only needed a small amount of material to be removed to bring us within our desired clearance tolerance, and as such, they opted to simply hone them to size as opposed to reaming and then honing. With honing oil running over the bore, the lifter hone is driven in a drill by hand, and again, it's kind of a slow and tedious process, with several strokes of the hone being made before stopping to measure the diameter and honing more as needed until our size was reached. In addition to measuring the lifter bores with a bore gauge, a pair of lifters was also used so that we could check by feel, kind of as a second verification of the size. When it was all said and done, I was super happy with the way everything came out, and I'm feeling really excited about the way the machine work has come together on this block. It was a great time hanging out at Getta's Racing Engines in Colorado Springs and seeing them perform these operations that we don't currently have the capability to do, and we really appreciated their expertise and professionalism. Thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for the next video in the 483 Stroker series.